she's staring at.
This is Battleship for Game Boy, released in 1992 by Mindscape and based on the classic tabletop game where your main objective is to lob missiles at the opposing fleet and sink them. Chances are you might have played the game, you've seen it in stores, or you might have seen that movie. You know, with the one with the aliens. This has nothing to do with that. Battleship has seen a number of video game conversions, two of which were featured on this here channel ages ago. There was the Game Gear version, and there was also the NES version. And this Game Boy iteration is pretty much the same as those two titles, but it's been years since I had touched those games, so this will seem fresh after all these, Fun fact, Battleship is actually a localized version of a game called Navy Blue, which got a couple extra entries on the old Game Boy and Family Computer in Japan. None of which we'll be playing because one is more than enough for me. The premise of Battleship is fairly straightforward. You begin a new game by positioning your fleet of ships on the grid, and then you and your computer opponent take turns moving a cursor around said grid, picking spots to launch missiles in the hope of landing a blow against the enemy fleet. And this continues until one player wipes the other fleets out and they can go, "You sunk my battleship," and all that jazz. Now with the tabletop game, it's fairly straightforward stuff. Each player has 5 ships to position. I think that's what it was. Last time it's been a while. Player 1 announces coordinates, player 2 declares whether it's hit, vice versa, continue. Nothing more complex than that. But for a video game setting, that one single configuration is rather limiting and gets boring after a while. So this version gives you 48 different rounds of play to string together one loose campaign of sorts. The first round gives you 4 ships to position, and as you progress further, your fleet will evolve with new ships added or replacing your obsolete ones. Each ship type has a one-time use special weapon that can be selected by pressing the B button should you want to deploy. These range from multi-shots to single bombs covering a wider range. There's even sonar-based weapons that let you check for enemy sightings. Once the enemy fleet is wiped out, you'll earn a passcode to progress to the next round where you're given a new fleet to command and you get to redo this whole thing all over again. Playing Battleship on Game Boy reminded me of how I felt about playing Battleship on the NES, which reminded me about how I felt about playing Battleship on the Game Gear, which reminded me of the feeling for wanting to play actual Battleship, the tabletop game, with another human being. I'll give the game some credit. They have a nice clean looking layout. It has a couple cutscenes depicting shots missed and ships getting hit and eventually sinking. Moving the cursor around with a D-pad isn't a total chore, and having each ship in your fleet be equipped with special weapons is a nice touch to make things a bit interesting. I mean, look, they tried to make this gameplay hold up for a long single-player campaign spanning 48 rounds or whatever, which you can jump further to via password. Each round gives you different fleets, different armaments to play with. You're both on equal footing in terms of fleet deployment, but the gameplay as a whole is quite dull, and without the human element, Battleship is just Again, it's a clean-looking game, it's not a bit basic and boring, and on the sound front, you have a couple generically forgettable musical bits to go along with some ho-hum sound effects. Not much else to say there otherwise. Yeah, look, I'll level with you. When it comes to Battleship, the original tabletop game with another human player is the way to go. It's more fun, and there's that social element people seem to dislike nowadays. Battleship on Game Boy, the best I could say is that they did as good of a job as possible to turn that into a functional video game for consumption. It might not be the most exciting, it gets to be tedious after a while, but at the very least, it's functional. It follows the rules of Battleship well enough and adds enough spin to make it somewhat worthwhile. And if this is something you think or feel you might enjoy or even tolerate, by all means go for it, if you can find a cheap enough copy. Like I said, it's available for NES and Game Gear as well. But there are better ways of getting your Battleship fix out there. Somewhere. Yep. Okay, I'm gone. Bye.